For the first time ever, Duke men's basketball is going to play an ACC game all the way out in the state of California. Wow.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man. The Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on this Wednesday, January 14th, 2026. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, our guy Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated is hanging out with us on the program. We're going to talk about Duke getting set for their game at California a little bit later tonight. Very late tonight, I might add. 11 p.m. Eastern tip-off for Jon Scheyer and company. We'll also touch on what's been happening with Manny Diaz and the Duke football squad as they put together their roster for 2026. College sports just aren't slowing down whatsoever. So we'll dive into all of that and so much more here on today's show. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Take a moment, if you will, to watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on X at LO_Blue Devils. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_, and find the show on Instagram and TikTok too. So without further ado, Conor O'Neill hanging out with us here today, my friend. And wow, we have a Duke basketball ACC game set to be played a little bit later in the state of California. The day has finally come, man.
Yeah, cue up the all-coast conference jokes and all those. I mean, once you move past the wackiness and you acknowledge that this is not an ideal scenario for anybody involved, and Stanford and Cal have to come east a lot more often than anybody on this side of the country has to go out there. It is kind of cool. Like it's cool. When else would it happen where Duke and Carolina is out there playing kind of the inverse schedule there at Stanford tonight and then Cal on Saturday? When else would it happen where those blue bloods play at on campus places? Like they're not playing in, some neutral site, some net manipulated type game or some payday type game. They're playing home games or road games for them.
Yep, that will count towards the league standings as people try to win this ACC title, a title that Duke won a season ago, and now they're looking to build off that with the Cal team a little bit later today. We'll get into some of those specifics in just a moment, but before we get there, it's a Duke team that earned a pair of top 25 victories last week on the road at Louisville and then a home win over SMU, a Boopie Miller-less SMU squad. But nonetheless, 2 wins. What are those big takeaways that you've got from Duke's week?
Yeah, it's just it's such a double-edged sword with this team right now. And to kind of reiterate something Jon said on the teleconference on Monday, you never take winning for granted. And these are 2 talented teams that Duke beat in spite of both of them being without their point guards. Michael Brown being out for Louisville right now too. But they're still talented teams. And Louisville was talented enough to be up 9 at halftime on Duke.
Yep.
So they did something right in the course of that game. Duke has some kind of hold over Louisville where they're just going to beat the brakes off of them in second halves, apparently, because that's 13 months. In the last 13 months, it's happened 3 times where Louisville has had a halftime lead on Duke, and then Duke is – I think the combined margin is Duke plus 51 in the second halves of the last 3 matchups against Louisville. So that worked out at Louisville. It's arguably Duke's best win of the season. And then playing SMU, you can focus on being without Boopie Miller. He's obviously a big part of their puzzle. I always think that the inverse gets left off of those discussions too often, where when a player is out, you inevitably have other players step into larger roles. They get more of a share of the pie. And Jaden Toombs was ready to step up and had a great game in Cameron. And I don't think that happens if Boopie plays. He's able to get more shot diet because Boopie's not in there. So there were good things Duke did, but also the other edge of that sword, man, is this team's defense is not where it needs to be. It has not elevated to, not to regurgitate everything Jon said in Monday's teleconference, but like that's one of his main frustrations right now, is that this team was more consistently connected on defense in November and into early December. Yeah. And that has not continued to progress the way it needed to. They're again, I mean, they're not terrible at it. Like Jon said, they're not giving up 120 points to everybody. They're not giving up 1.5 points per possession to everyone right now. They're just not where they need to be. And that's kind of the main focus going into this week is, okay, can they get to where they need to be? It's not going to happen all at once, but can they show some positive steps in the right direction instead of what we've seen, especially on the defensive end of the floor for the last really 5 games.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the defense has kind of fallen off the way that it has, and yet Duke's been able to hold on offensively and get the job done. Some of the oddities that have been there with SMU in particular, turning the basketball over 21 times, and yet Duke walking away with 0 fast break points. I mean, I don't ever really see something like that in the box score there. They did have 21 points off turnovers, but it was a game where Duke also lost the rebounding battle. Credit to SMU for shooting so well and not giving rebounds as big of an opportunity if you're making them. But that was one of those where some of the box score, you're looking at it and it just doesn't seem like it add up to the victory for Duke. But you keep referencing Coach Scheyer and what he had to say after this one. I'll do the same thing. He wants to point out it's a win at the end of the day.
Right. It's a win. It's not like, it's not the end of the world if Duke has played worse in the last 5 games than they did in November, because that has no bearing on whether they're playing their best when it really matters. And we're still a little bit of ways away from when it really matters. I mean, they played 4 out of 18 ACC games on the docket. There's still there's everything that comes in March. So it is a weird place for this team to be. It's not a lost cause. It's not just chalk up a second round exit or a Sweet 16 exit. Like, I don't think you can leap to any you can't leap to any conclusions with this team while also wanting to see more from them. There's meat left on the bone with some of this stuff. That they've shown us what they're capable of. It's not like we're going to sit here and just wait for the potential to show up. They won at Michigan State.
Yeah.
Like
they still just one loss to their name.
They came up with a clutch play against Florida to win at home. Even I keep referencing it in the stories I write. Their one loss was when they were leading by 17 in the second half and they lost by 1. It's not like they got run off the court by Texas Tech. It's not like they showed you a fatal flaw that can be exposed and get them beat by 20. Like that has not happened with this group.
I needed that, Conor. I needed that. I had not sat here and thought about the fact that, there was a 17-point lead in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, their competitive DNA is probably the best thing that this team has going for it. That's why when you talk about what this team did in the early stages of the schedule compared to what last year's team couldn't do, which was close tight games and make the game-winning plays when it's a one-possession game or a tied game in the last few minutes, like this team has the edge over last year's team.
Yep.
If you want to get into the comparisons. So it's there. Like the ceiling is still clearly Indianapolis. The floor is just lower. Like the variability is a lot higher because of what this team has shown us in the last 5 games. Like the stat that I keep coming back to, last year I was kind of obsessed with field goal percentage for Duke's offense and how many times they shot above 60% field goal. I think it wound up being, it was half of their wins, maybe a little more than that. I think it was almost half of the games, maybe 19 out of 39. 4 out of the last 5 games, Duke has allowed an field goal percentage above 60%. And the exception was Louisville. So it's good that they didn't get the brakes
Yep.
beaten off of them against Louisville. Louisville went cold in the second half, and a lot of that had to do with Duke playing better defense. I don't want to take that away from them and just say Louisville's missing a bunch of open shots. But this Duke defense for a long time has been predicated on making you miss shots. Like they're not always really active with the turnovers. Like when you get a 21 turnover game, that's great, but they're not always active in turnovers. Their skill defensively has typically just been making you take tough shots and missing them, and then defensive rebounding and running back down the court and getting into advantageous spots with their offense. So when you're letting a team shoot that high a percentage, and when 4 of 5 teams shoot that high percentage against you, it becomes really, really concerning.
Well, let's see what they can do again against Cal here, because at the end of the day, if the defense isn't playing well, if you could fall back on your offense to outscore your opponents, you're getting a win at the end of the day. So we'll start to dive into that a little bit further here when Locked On Blue Devils continues. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The college football playoffs are here. We've got one game left to go, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action. National championship game coming up between Indiana and Miami. Who had that one to start the year? That's why college football is so fun. Right now, every college football game day, FanDuel gets a user a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Ride with the favorite when you think your team controls the matchup. Take a shot with the underdog if you feel an upset coming. Then apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoffs long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every single game day. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, my guy Conor O'Neill's hanging out with us on the program today. Let's talk Duke basketball. A late one tonight against Cal, 11 p.m. Eastern. This game will tip off, and we've talked a little bit about the defense. Now I want to go to the offense, and if you're Duke, you're feeling good about your offense. If we were talking long about Cameron Boozer and who could be the secondary option to him. Man, Isaiah Evans has really turned a corner, and if that shooting continues to show up, I think Duke's going to really like what they're getting each time down on the offensive end of the floor.
Yeah, if Isaiah Evans is going to score 20 a game, and in addition to Cam Boozer scoring 23 or 24, averaging, and usually on a percentage that makes your eyes pop out of your head, Duke is going to be in a really good position offensively.
You'll feel great. Yeah.
We're not going to have to relive all these conversations about who's Duke's second option. Duke needs a second scorer. They need somebody to go off of. Clearly it'll be Isaiah Evans. It's a team that does not have to worry very much about where their offense comes from right now. I mean, Pat Gongba had some great moves down in the low post, and I think he matched a career high with 17 points against SMU. So, and that was the first game all year that he's come off the bench.
Yep.
It's a team that does not have to worry too much about manipulating offense for itself right now. It's going to come. Like, they have shot makers, they have ball movement, they're getting just about everything that they want to offensively right now.
And it could come from a lot of different options, as you're saying there, with Gongba putting in 17. Caden Boozer comes off the bench and adds 12 for Duke in the game against SMU. Against SMU, 10 shot attempts for Gongba were the second most he's had all year, only to that Army game. I love getting him more involved on the inside because, again, if Evans is knocking him down from the outside, Cam Boozer doing his thing, you get a more aggressive Gongba on the interior. I really don't know who's slowing down. And then if we want to talk about the wing spot with what you're getting out of Sarr or Himenia offensively, it doesn't become as big of a discussion because you've got more reliable other options on the offensive end of the floor.
Yeah, it just feels like the discussion is you're so talented with Boozer, Evans, Gongba, what Caleb Foster gave you against Louisville, especially in the second half, getting downhill and playing off 2 feet around the lane. The discussion kind of becomes, okay, if Caden Boozer and Dame Sarr can stand in the corner and knock down 50 to 60% of catch and shoot threes, that will be really good. And you know they're going to be open because those other guys draw so much attention. Like, they get doubled in the post. They have guys digging down and collapsing. So this is another place where we talk about how skilled of a passer, especially Duke's big men are. You're going to get open looks if you're in the corner. You just have to make them. And then Nick Ameni is a little different. Nick is more of a slasher, and he was able to get in there. I think he got fouled and didn't convert the and one, but at least got fouled and made a shot going in there and taking some contact. If he can do that, even better. They're going to close out on him. And again, you'll want him to make some shots, but I tend to think he's more of a slasher and needs to get into the paint and finish around the rim a little more.
So Cal specifically, again, Cal and Stanford, the two opponents for Duke in their West Coast trip against both of these teams. Funny enough, both have a 13-4 overall record at current moment. But when you look at the Cal side of things, what do you think is noteworthy for Duke basketball fans to be aware of?
They're going to have to stop Justin Pippen, Scotty's son. He transferred from Michigan. I don't think he played all that much last year for Michigan. I might be mistaken on that, but I saw Michigan play last year. It was early in the season, and I don't remember a Pippen on the roster even.
Sure.
He's had a sophomore breakout season. He's a shorter guard. I think Day Ames is their leading scorer. He'll be a name semi-familiar to ACC fans. He was at Virginia last year. He was better at Iowa State previously. That was a weird Virginia team last year with Tony Bennett leaving 2.5 weeks before the opener. Lee Dort is back. He's kind of just a blunt instrument on the inside. One of the things to keep an eye on is that Pat Gongba is really talented and really good when he's not enveloped in the physical ticky-tack stuff on the inside. And Lee Dort is big and strong and physical and might goad Pat Gongba into getting out of his game. I mean, I think there will be a little bit of a maturity test here for Pat where it's, hey, you're more valuable to us than he is to their team. And Duke needs Pat Gongba to be on the court more than they need him to be picking up fouls 30 feet, 80 feet from the bucket. Nobody needs that, at least for Duke. I mean, Cal needs it. Trying to think who else. I think they have some injury issues. But mainly it's the two guards that will really scare you. If Day Ames and or Justin Pippen get hot, then this could become a lot more of a game than I think what people are expecting.
And you would figure the crowd's really going to be into it, a chance to host a Duke team at home. Like, that's going to really fire them up. And again, that goes back to how big it would be if Duke can get a strong shooting night to kind of stay in it. Because, I mean, if there are visions already of Duke clanking shots on one end, and then you've got these guards that are making crazy plays and getting the crowd into it, that's when it's real like, oh boy, we might be in a little bit of danger here.
Yeah, I neglected to mention too, Chris Bell. He can go off against anybody. I watched a bit of Virginia's game. I think they were playing Louisville out there, and Louisville beat them by 20. Chris Bell is the Syracuse transfer that can get hot, and Louisville got up big early, and Chris Bell was kind of the one that was hitting shots and getting Cal at least kind of within shouting distance of the lead. So he's a 6'7", wiry wing type that can throw him in if he gets hot.
Whole lot of transfers, as is the case with so many teams within the sport. And as you're hearing, so many guys within the conference that are now finding new spots to play and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm excited to see this one play out. Again, Conor, it's a strange occurrence that now we've got Duke playing a state of California game in the ACC for it to count towards something at the end of the year. But nonetheless, really cool opportunity. We'll see how the Blue Devils fare. 11 p.m. Eastern tonight. What we want to do, though, is I want to talk a little football while I've got you here, because the transfer portal, I mentioned tons of basketball, guys. It's off and running on the football side of things as well. We'll dive into that here when Locked On Blue Devils continues. Thanks so much, guys, for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and your first watch here today. And thank you so much for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go check out our new Everydayer Club. This is access to an ad-free audio version of Locked On Blue Devils, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You'll get an invite to our members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this very show. So go check it out. We've got a link down in our description below, and join the Everydayer Club. Special shout out to all the Everydayers out there. Be sure to let us know in the comments down below if you're an Everydayer. Appreciate all the support here with Locked On. After this, make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today for all the latest news and happenings in the wide world of sports. Hanging out with Conor O'Neill on the program today, and taking a look now at some Duke football things. As I mentioned it a little bit earlier, talking about our friends at FanDuel in the college football playoff, only 2 teams are left playing in the sport, as we will see Miami, shout out ACC, playing for the national championship against a juggernaut that is the Indiana Hoosiers football squad. And yet, Conor, 2 teams preparing for a chance to win this 2025 season crown, and everybody else in the sport is doing everything possible to bolster their teams via the transfer portal for 2026.
Yeah, we got to fix this calendar, man. It's just
it's crazy.
As Manny has said a few times now, it's the only sport that lets free agency occur during the season. There are still teams playing, and you have all this roster movement. And that ideally, my ideal situation would be you get a spring portal, and that's it. No movement right now. Just have it at the end of the spring semester or toward the end of the spring semester. I realize everybody's academic calendar can't line up the way we would all want it to, but one portal window at the end of the spring semester for everybody, and that would solve what's going on right now. With you almost feel like Miami and Indiana, by playing in the national championship, are disadvantaged going into next season because they can't recruit as much because they're game planning to try to win a national championship. It's just that's such backward logic that we have to fix it quickly.
Yeah. No, I think if it's after spring, I know the argument right away for coaches is, wanting them to be a part of your program for the spring period and building toward a season and that sort of thing. I think you just easily counter with, look, college football has been around for a really long time. Over 150 seasons have been celebrated within the sport, and they were able to get by with not having people a part of their team for spring football, man. And I think you mentioned all the transfers that are in the sport and whatnot. I've heard coaches talk about none of these guys are actually making progress towards a degree when you're hopping around all the time. And if you have to, stay a full academic year somewhere, at least you got that you kind of point to, that you haven't made that type of switch and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, not everybody is going to get to make it to the NFL. And maybe you should try to take advantage of these opportunities once again to get one of those fine degrees.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the main obstacles, and I think it should be easier than it probably is convincing coaches, hey, you don't have to have your roster finalized by January 25th. You can hold off on that. You can have a general idea, and you can go through spring practices with a general idea of who's on your team, and then you can have a portal, and college football will go on. Fall camp practices remain so much more valuable than spring practices.
Yep. And, I hate to keep pointing to the NFL, but it's very easy to do that and let the world know, free agency doesn't start until March. The draft isn't until the very end of April. And yet they're able to make it work and put their teams together and go through a season. All right. I digress. Enough of that. What's happening in reality is that the transfer portal is very active. Darian Mensah did not go into the transfer portal. He's coming back to Duke for another season. Cooper Barkate, Nate Shepard coming back to Duke for another year. But I know there have been a couple of guys who have made decisions to head off. A couple of other big names have joined the team. If you were, for our fans here at Locked On Blue Devils, give us a spark notes, 2, 3, 4, maybe big names that have either decided to go away or come in. What are kind of the big things that people should be sharing in Duke football conversations right now?
the two big ones that have left that I think anybody in Duke's program would tell you they didn't want to leave were receiver Quayshawn Brown and safety Mekhi Jones. Brown spent 3 years at Duke, he's in this weird realm of like, did he have a breakout season last year or was this year's breakout season? Because last year he had some good numbers, but some other games where he kind of felt like he was lost. This year he had a great season. I think he almost had 900 yards. He had the picturesque touchdown to go ahead in the Sun Bowl where he's diving into the
cereal bowl,
inflatable thing of Frosted Flakes. So that's one that they did not want to lose. But I will add, there are a lot of dynamic game-breaking slot receivers in college football. Those are the types that you can find those. It's not like they're on every street corner, but they're also not that rare in college football. Mekhi Jones is a little different of a story. He is already within less than 24 hours of going into the portal, he's signed with Florida State. So
real quick,
and Quayshawn Brown is at Virginia Tech. So, but they both stayed in the ACC. Mekhi Jones was a young safety who played about 300 snaps this year for Duke. Never really want to lose a freshman who is good enough to play that many snaps that early in his career. But this was a late one, and with the expediency that he signed with Florida State, you kind of feel like he was poached off of your roster, and that can happen. Duke moved really quickly to replace Quayshawn Brown. They got Javen Nicholas in a couple days later from Charlotte. I can't wait to kind of get to know more about his story. He was a walk-on at LSU for 3 years and kind of made his way as a special teams guy and went to Charlotte this year so he could play and wound up putting great numbers for a 1-11 team, but had something like 60 catches for 700 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns, something like that. So, like I said, slot receivers that can be productive out of that position, they're not all that rare in college football.
And you got a great quarterback to be throwing you the ball.
Right. And you have good skill around you on offense with Cooper Barkate, Jeremiah Hazley coming back at tight end, and Nate Shepard in the backfield with Darian. They brought in another tight end, Nate Kuriski from Louisville. They needed another one with Landon King leaving. He exhausted his eligibility. And then the big position to look at is what Duke did in the secondary. They brought in 4 guys. Let me make sure I get the names right here. Dylan Flowers from Western Kentucky, Keon Loud from Montana, Patrick Smith Young from North Texas, and Che Ojurike. We're gonna have to work with Shoemate on the pronunciation for that, or Fetters. But Duke needed to get more competition, needed to get more skill in its secondary, and bringing in 4 guys. Flowers can play some nickel or some corner. Loud is going to be a corner, and then the other 2 are going to be safeties. And look, I didn't even realize this until a few weeks ago. Duke's pass defense finished 3rd to last in the country in yards allowed per game.
Wow.
It's not all in the secondary. Like, you need pass rush to do that. You need to be able to tackle in space, and that's every position on the defense. But Duke gave up the 3rd most passing yards in the country this season, and that needed to be addressed in the secondary.
And it clearly is, as you said, all those names coming in and joining the secondary and that sort of thing. So plenty of opportunities for us to highlight more of these names in the days and weeks to come in the transfer portal as Duke continues to build their roster for this 2026 season. So, Conor, I know that you are on top of it all over at Devils Illustrated. I can't encourage people enough to go be a part of the community. What's the best way to support you? How can they do those things?
Oh my gosh. Come on over to Devils Illustrated. We've got a deal running. It's still running. I think it runs through the end of January, but you don't want to wait until January 31st and then not have it be active. It's 50% off for a year annual membership.
That's awesome.
Usually runs you $120, and right now it's running you $60. So come on over to Devils Illustrated. It's a growing community. We're getting more message board activity on there every day, and I would love people to sign up.
All right, man. Good to see you, Conor. We'll do this again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor O'Neill joining us here on the program. He's from Devils Illustrated. Go support his work. One of my good friends, and happy that he's a part of the program each and every week. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to us wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That means so much to us when you take the time to do that. It makes me very happy. So, without further ado, that'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. Enjoy the basketball game late tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern tip-off. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.